Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. We've got a full 2-hour show ready for you today. Kind of a typical Wednesday around here. Buy, sell, or hold coming your way. Your submissions to the show. We look forward to those every week. We'll get through as many of those as we possibly can, and then the rest we'll get to in overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. Don't forget you can become one by going to blazetv.com/Deace, and you'll get a discount on your subscription if you do at blazetv.com/Deace. And thank you if you already did. And then next hour we'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, who wants to alert us to the worst form of voter fraud happening in America, and it is still rampant. We'll get to that with Daniel coming up next hour. But let's kick it off right now, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the Trump Hotel Mara Gaza. During Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel's visit to the White House yesterday, President Trump dropped this bombshell.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
He says regardless of the outcome of who ends up living in Gaza, the two-state solution can't be tried again.
I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they've tried the other, and they've tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't work. It will never work. And you have to learn from history. History has, just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East.
Yeah, if Gaza is back on the colonization menu for the United States, I, for one, cannot wait to see my Kansas City Chiefs go for a 7-peat in Super Bowl 63 against the Mara Gaza fighting IEDs. At that same press conference, a reporter tried to ask Trump a question about Afghanistan, and we got an all-time throwaway response from Trump.
Do you have any plan to change Afghanistan situation? Are you able to recognize Taliban? Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan suffered women. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from?
Afghanistan.
Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying.
There are rumblings President Trump is preparing an executive order soon to abolish the Department of Education, and he picked up a key yet unlikely supporter, teacher union boss Randy Weingarten.
States and localities run education. That's where 90% of the funding for education goes. They already run it. They should run it. The federal government should not run it.
Okay, I'm sure Randy didn't mean to communicate what she actually communicated, but it's another sign of Democrat demoralization that they're accidentally repeating our slogans. Trump's nominee for Attorney General, Pam Bondi, was confirmed yesterday evening by the Senate in a 54-46 vote, with John Fetterman crossing party lines to vote for her. We mentioned in passing yesterday RFK Jr. made it out of committee and now will face the full Senate for his confirmation vote during deliberations in the Senate Finance Committee whether they should move forward with RFK. Senator Pocahontas of the state of Pfizer brought out the world's tiniest violin. Whoops, wrong clip.
This is not only about a private company that gets sued and has to pay out. Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space.
Moving on, and now this.
Good news, everyone!
The NFL has announced they are no longer spray painting the words "End Racism" at the back of the end zone, starting with this weekend's Super Bowl. That means racism has finally been solved. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, your thoughts?
You can Google it. You don't have to trust me. But the people that commit 80% of the most violent crimes in this country are white supremacists.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is, that's 2028 Democrat presidential nominee Jasmine Crockett to you, bub.
对你来说 这就是2028年民主党总统候选人 Jasmine Crockett。
U.S. Congresswoman, allegedly, Ilhan Omar from the state of Somalia spoke in Somalian to a Somalian TV outfit with explicit instructions on how to avoid immigration and customs enforcement. He said you don't have to talk to them, tell them you want a lawyer. Again, that's allegedly a U.S. Congresswoman. And finally, Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order this afternoon protecting women's sports, ostensibly banning dudes who feel pretty from competing against women. It's unclear at which levels of competition this executive order will impact. Among those invited to the ceremony, women's sports advocate Riley Gaines, libs of TikTok's Shaya Rashik, Gays Against Groomers founder Jamie Michelle, and guest of the show and XXXY Athletics founder Jennifer Say. Say's company this week produced this powerful video featuring Riley Gaines. What you're about to watch was actually shared by author J.K. Rowling with her millions of followers, who added that after watching this, her husband actually purchased 3 shirts from XXXY Athletics.
Riley Gaines and Sia Lihi are in hot water over their transphobic comments. And I just gotta say, who cares if biological males play in women's sports? Just be inclusive.
Could not agree more. This is just a bunch of fear-mongering from right-wing bigots.
She's been a massive distraction from her team with her hate-filled rhetoric. Sia is not inclusive. And males invading women's sports isn't even a problem, as far as I'm concerned.
It's inspiring stuff. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Trust and Will. Of course, you don't want to have these kinds of change of life or end of life conversations. You don't look forward to them. Nevertheless, change in life and end of life is inevitable. That's why you want to make sure you've got someone that you can trust that also provides an opportunity to do this affordably and with plenty of customization. And that's where our friends at Trust and Will came in a few years ago. We decided at our house to update our change of life, end of life situations and paperwork and documentation and wishes. And Amy went through that and just absolutely raved about the experience that she had with Trust and Will. So you can keep your family prepared and protected by managing your will or trust online. Each will or trust is state-specific, legally validated, and also customized to your needs. All right? So whether we're talking care wishes, nomination, guardians, final arrangements, power of attorney, etc., it's a simple step-by-step process that guides you from start to finish, one question at a time. They've also got live customer support available through phone chat and email. So uncomplicate the process with Trust and Will. Protect what matters most in minutes at trustandwill.com/Deace. That's trustandwill.com/Deace and get 10% off plus free shipping. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/Deace. Real quick, right before we went on the air, I saw ESPN talking about President Trump's executive order on women's sports today. Listen to this tweet. I'm just going to read it to you. Completely different language than what the worldwide leader has used on this issue. On the rare occasions, by the way, when it has even addressed it, it's, for the most part, tried to pretend like this is just not an issue. Okay? President Donald Trump will sign an executive order Wednesday designed to prevent people who were biologically assigned male at birth from participating in women's or girls' sporting events. Now, that in and of itself is a ridiculous statement. If you were biologically assigned a gender at birth, guess what you are? That. But you have to understand, this is a giant leap forward here from the worldwide leader, because they're back to, at least on some level, acknowledging biological reality. You have any thoughts on this, Todd, as a father of a young woman right now competing in sports at a very high level who's suing the NCAA as we speak for not protecting her sport and others?
First of all, ESPN journalism is still magical and not at all broken. I mean, basically, they've done everything they can either to not cover it at all or to harass the very women that they claim to be representing. And then when they go, yay, Caitlin Clark, just like here in Iowa, I'm naming, I know, he's all Iowa sports good guy here in town, Keith Murphy. He's all over slurping Caitlin Clark every day. He was nowhere to be found and this goes back to 2022 when my daughter ignored this whole thing. Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union, the only high school girls union in the state that's just girls. It only does girls sports. Most of these are umbrella organizations that do boys and girls. Nothing. Absolutely nothing on this. When my daughter was shown harassing, got a harassing text just like this, back when she was a senior in high school, and she showed him to our high school principal, Andrea Hoekstra, and that woman said, we can't do anything about it. There's so many people here, just like ESPN, and it relates just to COVID. When Steve says there's so many people who are ashamed of what they've done, they'll just never admit their wrongs. That's the best case scenario. The worst case is that all these minions regret nothing. They're going to cope and seethe. I've got lots to say about it. My daughter had to be escorted from her car to school to make sure she wasn't harassed when she was a senior in high school by her boyfriend. I'm obviously, Steve, thank you for the microphone on this, but I could go on all day. Now I've got not only Ainsley, but Tessa, their brand representatives for XY. Like you said, they're still part of the lawsuit, but we have so much further to go because this executive order only takes care of the federal government and organizations that take federal funding. By the way, that doesn't take care of your local girls' softball or soccer complex or anything like that. If you believe in this cause, you need to step on the gas right now, and you need to go after all the people I just mentioned and all the people in your community and name names and mock them shamelessly, because right now there's all of the people that you think of as the good guys, the people that you follow in the sports world. They're almost always the ones that could have stepped up and said something and created some critical mass. Steve knows the person I'm talking about. Keith Murphy isn't a bad guy, but he absolutely failed on this. And I've been calling him out publicly. I call out the Iowa Girls Association publicly because that's what needs to happen. Shame them until they repent for what they did. Thank you, Steve.
I have to say, we referenced this in passing yesterday, but I am glad Aaron put the entire clip up in the montage today. Elizabeth Warren saying vaccine manufacturers already have too little margin of profit. I mean,
point of order. Let's be fair to old Pocahontas here. That is true. It is true. They do not operate on very, very high margins, because after they get done sharing their profits and their royalties with bureaucrats at the NIH, there's really not that much left over, is there?
But keep going, Steve.
I mean, this is, I mentioned this yesterday. It bears repeating. Nothing says I'm a liberal for the downtrodden and oppressed quite like multilateral, multinational, trillion-dollar corporations don't have enough profit margin. Oh. I mean, that is Gordon Gekko level of lack of self-awareness. Number one. I mean, that is, and for, if you're Todd, if you're in our generation or older, our entire careers we have gotten beaten up for being on the right, for not caring about working people, not caring about the poor. And here is Senator Karen, one of the most high-profile We're here to save you whether you need it or not. Liberal white women, Karens from the cul-de-sac with the Subaru and the coexist bumper sticker saying, we can't afford to cut into the profit margins of the multi-trillion-dollar corporations.
You want to see my Pfizer tramp stamp?
Indeed.
But keep talking because off air
the second part of that.
Yes,
the second part of that is I did not see yesterday when we responded to the clip in passing because this clip, the first half of that clip came out right as we were coming on the air, so it couldn't get into the montage. But I wanted to reference it during the show. The other half of the clip I had not seen until your montage, Aaron. Well, if these vaccine manufacturers are sued repeatedly and successfully, they may just vacate the space.
And then you ask the question.
Why would they be repeatedly sued successfully?
Indeed.
Why would they be repeatedly sued successfully? Why would they be repeatedly sued?
These are life-saving drugs who save millions and thousands and billions of lives, Steve.
Why would they? Anybody help me? Why would they be? Why would they be repeatedly sued successfully? How might that happen? I'm just kind of at a loss. That is preposterous. And we told you yesterday that members of your Senate spent 4.5 hours entertaining whatever the hell that was interview that we shared clips with you yesterday. 4.5 hours of closed door testimony they shared. They gave their time, your treasure too, because you're paying for it, to that tripe that we paid for, that we showed you yesterday. These are our betters. Why? That's a self-indicting statement.
Yep.
There's only one reason they'd be sued repeatedly successfully. They're guilty of repeated acts of malfeasance and liability. That's the only reason.
Remember?
That's the only reason.
When you and Daniel putting together your second COVID book,
Rise of the Fourth Reich.
Yes, and you had the mind meld, which basically made you collectively, oh, this is what Todd Erzin must feel like. When you both looked at each other and you said, Steve, if they did this to us on COVID, finish that sentence.
Daniel said to me, we got done with the very last interview for the book.
Yeah.
And we always download it after every interview, where we want to take it, how we want to, where we want to place it in the book, what we thought, what we want to highlight, etc. And then as we got done, he goes, Steve, this probably isn't the first time they've done something like this.
Bingo.
And it just stopped me in my tracks, Why would they be sued repeatedly successfully? What is that? It's a little bit like Stephen A. Smith saying yesterday that if you don't want DEI, then you just want white supremacy. Well, what you're really saying, and this is who their new presidential candidate's going to be. My goodness, could you imagine what a J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis would do to Stephen A. Smith on an actual debate stage, not a scripted one on ESPN with a opposite another person spewing the same crap from the same perspective, or some guy that's more ashamed of being white than you are that he is. All right, so they're just looking to lose the argument. They're a total tomato can. They're the Brooklyn Brawler. Remember WWF when we were kids, and the Brooklyn Brawler always came out to lose to the headline, the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan. Okay, they're the tomato can lined up. Okay, the stiff to lose. They're Glass Joe. They're there to be white and lose to you. That's why they're there. Okay. Well, that's not who either J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis are. They'd embarrass the hell out of that cat and make him and feed him his lunch and shove it so far down his throat, he'd literally crap it out the other end right there on the stage. That's your talking point? Because you're just openly admitting then, oh, okay, so you're saying non-white people can't compete on a level playing field. What do we typically call it when people claim that based on certain immutable traits, people can't compete on a level playing field, typically? Like race, what's that usually called? Racism, dumbass! Same thing applies here. Why would they be successfully, repeatedly sued? There's only one reason why. And man, I got to tell you, The amount of stupidity on this issue is and I mean easily pushed back stupidity. Even before I was forced to care about this issue, because I never wanted to. Even before I was forced to care about it. I'd watch you go back and forth with people on Twitter on vaccines and not vaccinating your kids. And it never made any sense to me. Because I worked with you, I've let you sit next to me working with me in close proximity for more than a decade now. And I never once was concerned that you chose not to vaccinate your kids. Can you guess why? Can you guess why? And what they might be carrying and therefore give to you. Do you know why I wasn't concerned?
Because you were vaccinated.
Because I was vaccinated. So what would be the point of the vaccines? So I can go to Haiti for a week and a half post-earthquake when it's the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. And as long as my boosters are updated, I can do that and come back home and no one's concerned about me bringing anything from Haiti, where when we built them a well, I watched a pastor get down on his knees and sob like the Lord had just delivered manna, okay? The conditions there were so destitute. And yet I can just, how you like me now, Comodi, right through this, right through customs, provided I demonstrated on my passport, my boosters are updated. But I can't withstand if Todd Erzin and his kids aren't vaccinated every wintertime. What the hell sense does that make? And in a country when we have running water and sanitation and electricity and gas readily available, and suddenly he's the danger, but I could go to Haiti and back and not risk contaminating the populace? It made no sense.
To be fair, in Haiti, you were fully masked the whole time and kept 6 feet of distance, right?
No. No. It made no sense.
Aaron, you got a cigarette? Because I need one.
Neither does this make any sense. What about this makes so many people so dumb? Do you even believe your own talking points?
Because it's a cult.
Either the vaccines work or they don't. Like we went through with the COVID vaccine mandates. It's your fault the virus is mutating because you're not getting the vaccine. What the hell kind of product has a success depend on the people that don't use it? What is this? This stuff can, if you just backed away for a second in common sense, you debunk the majority of this by just asking questions based on their, not even a different premise, their own. No, I didn't care that Todd and his wife wanted to watch Ricky Lake give birth and think granola is a salve. I don't care. You know why? Because I got vaccinated. So I didn't have to care. That's what I was told anyway. Get vaccinated, you have to care what idiots like the Urzins want to do. That was the whole point of getting vaccinated, right?
As you know, here's the next funny part about this. Before COVID, I was told the concern was herd immunity. Then what happened to that after COVID, Steve?
Well, the point of vaccines is to get us to herd immunity. What do you do that? How do you do? Well, first you do a seroprevalence study. You want to find out who's got antibodies because you want to get the vaccine to people who don't have built-in immunity right away, natural immunity, because we're trying to get to herd immunity as fast as we could. Except when we rolled out these vaccines, we acted like natural immunity never existed, which means humanity should have gone extinct about 7,000 years ago. Because we didn't have vaccines until the late 18th century. So what the hell did we do for 6,800 years? What did we do? How'd we survive? Again, without running water, without sanitation, without antibiotics, without electricity. What do we do? Without ample food and nutrition, without supplements. What do we do? That just roll off assembly lines. What do we do? Now, you want to know who's damaging the credibility? It's you. You guys couldn't stand up to somebody like me who isn't even dogmatically against you. But your own dogmas wouldn't stand up to 5 minutes of cross-examination in an open forum. And that's what they're really concerned about with RFK Jr.
Mm-hmm.
An open forum of cross-examination, that they would be forced to answer some of these questions that there's no answers for. So Elizabeth Warren, why would a vaccine manufacturer have to be concerned? What a great marketing technique. Well, we've got to make sure we don't hinder the people who could be sued repeatedly successfully.
I've got to thank Anthony Fauci right now, because if you would have told me in 2019 that I would one day be gifted with the fully weaponized battle station that is Steve Deace on this issue in this fashion just now. But man, thank you, Anthony Fauci.
I can
this
deal.
Was a symphony.
We all have our things, man. Okay. We all have our things we cannot tolerate. Dumb, I can't do. You can lie to me. You can be corrupt. I don't like those things either. I'll work around. But dumb, I have no tolerance for dumb at all. Zero. Some of you can't deal with people lying to you and being corrupt. Cool. Politics probably ain't going to be your field. No offense. All right? Find something else. Because you're going to get lied to and encounter corruption first from the people that agree with you before you even get to the people that don't. Okay? So we all have the thing, right? The thing we can't suffer gladly. Okay? I can't do dumb. I can't do dumb. I can't do it. And what I really can't do is when I know you're dumb and you know you're dumb and you know that I know you're dumb. And yeah, you keep being dumb anyway, because now you're playing me for a sucker. You're playing me for a fool. And I really don't do that well. I don't really suffer that on any level at all. So, strike one. Why does it matter if toddlers and families like him vaccine their kids? If you're vaccinated, doesn't make any sense. Isn't that the point of the vaccine? Strike two. Well, we're going to act like herd immunity never existed, and we're just going to vaccinate absolutely everybody, regardless of whether or not they've had the virus, healed from it, or not. In fact, we don't even want to know who has antibodies. We're not even going to. Remember, CDC didn't even publish seroprevalence antibody studies for like 2 freaking years during the middle of a pandemic. We don't even want to know. We don't want to know. Strike three. Elizabeth Warren. Well, they might be sued successfully repeatedly. What? They might? We have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. That's your messaging? We're going to protect the people who might be repeatedly sued successfully. I'm going to end up being a better Democrat than Democrats by the time that this is over. Do you even Democrat party, bro? Because here's another angle to this too. Let me point this out before we eject on this segment. One of the core constituency groups of Democrats for years, that's why they have opposed every form of tort reform, litigation reform, is which group of people? Trial lawyers. Trial lawyers. These injections matter more to that party than even the trial lawyers do. When you and I were growing up, we had to fight them to make medical innovation happen because everybody was afraid of getting litigious out of business by trial lawyers, right? Mm-hmm. Now the Democratic Party stands up and says, well, they're going to get sued successfully repeatedly, guys. And then they just won't make these things anymore. If they're being successfully sued repeatedly for what they're making, don't we want them to stop making it? Stop making that which you're getting sued successfully for. Stop. Idiots. Come up with better talking points, and if that's the best you got, well, you wouldn't survive any kind of scientific scrutiny conversation then if that's the best you got. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, brought to you by our friends over at UnderTac. When it comes to gear that can handle anything, there's no better choice than UnderTac, designed for, and tested by an elite special forces team in Africa's harshest conditions. UnderTac is made to perform when and where it matters most. Underwear, socks, t-shirts that keep you dry, comfortable, and mission ready all day long. made from premium materials that include 50% more moisture wicking than just cotton. Undertac offers tactical performance that goes beyond the basics. Now, for each and every one of us, we can feel like one of these guys, at least in certain parts of the body, without having the bodies that they have. All right, it's an all-American made and veteran-owned. Undertac has got your back. Plus, a portion of their profits supports veteran-run organizations that fight human trafficking. So it's a great product with a great cause. I wear it too. Absolutely love it. You can visit undertac.com. Use the code Steve20. Get 20% off site-wide when you use that code. Code is Steve20. Code Steve20 for 20% off site-wide at Undertac. UNDERTAC. Under and then TAC, undertac.com, code Steve20 for 20% off site-wide at undertac.com. All right. I had no idea I was going to unleash hell on that one comment from Elizabeth Warren for 15 minutes. So Buy-Seller Hold's going to start next hour because I do think we have to talk about what the president said about Gaza yesterday. Let me say this from the outset. When it comes to negotiating peace deals in the Middle East, I don't do this a lot with politicians, but I'm going to defer quite a bit here because President Trump's negotiated a few more peace deals in the Middle East than I have. Fair, maybe more than anyone has, frankly. Okay, so I don't want to get into the specifics of what he's proposing in and of itself because there aren't really any specifics. Right, and I'm going to be very deferential on someone's track record when they have the track record of success on a particular issue and region, in this case, as President Trump does. Number two, never forget with Donald Trump, you're in an art of the deal world, okay? And it is very possible, it's just as possible that Turning Point USA is going to be having a MAGA strip rally over there in Gaza for President Vance in 2032. Right? It's just as possible Charlie's going to be introducing President Vance from the MAGA Strip at Gaza Fest 2032. It's President Vance at Gaza Fest on the MAGA Strip. Okay, it's just as possible that that's going to happen as it is that Trump is trying to exert some leverage over Arab nations that have great influence in that region, like Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Essentially, this is the foreign policy version of come get your boy. Okay? I mean, these are your kin. These are your peeps. And they're just way too much of a hassle. Or to use an example from our history, kind of what the cops said to the immigrant gangs in urban areas like New York City about 100 years ago. If the stuff just got way out of control, there's a certain amount of violence, a certain amount of number running, a certain amount of prostitution that looked the other way because some of the cops liked the prostitutes and the number runnings themselves, okay, and played the numbers too. But if things got way out of hand, okay, well then the police chief would send the cops to the guys who ran the gangs and said, listen, some policing needs to happen here, and you could do it, which we would prefer. But if you don't, we're going to have to do it. And neither one of us really wants to have to do that. So kind of your call, right? Mm-hmm. Could be some of that going on, kind of, hey, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, come get your boy here. All right, these Palestinian terrorist insurgent, radical douchebags. Time to, exert some greater influence here. Because if you don't police your own, I promise you won't like it if you make me do it. Okay, very possible that that either of those outcomes is the outcome of this in the next 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Fair, okay, and we'll just wait and see. It's the art of the deal world. Who knows? But we're a worldview show, and so I think it's important that someone explain to as many people as possible why this continues to be a persistent problem. And I'm gonna give you thousands of years of history in about 6 minutes, okay? Many people think that the arguments over Gaza now, this entire area of the world, It's been said the Valley of Megiddo in particular has had more war fought on it as a singular landmass in human history than any other landmass. But this entire region of the world has, you're talking the Fertile Crescent. So it has been fought over and fought for more times than we can count over 7,000 years of recorded human history. And a lot of people think that this is a 7,000-year-old argument, and that is correct. But they think it's the same people arguing with the descendants, or they're the descendants of those people from 7,000 years ago, and that's not true. That's not true. The Palestinians, who are they? Well, you have to start by telling you who they're not. The Palestinians are not the descendants of the peoples that originally inhabited that land, that the Jews during Bible times fought for the land. They're not the descendants of those people. They're not. At this time in history, this land is known as Canaan. Within Canaan, there are numerous different kingdoms: Jebusites, Hittites, etc. Those peoples are lost to history. They don't exist. They either were eradicated by the Jews, or the Jews, they were assimilated into Judaism. But those cultures are gone. So this isn't the descendants of the same people that were fighting over the Gaza Strip and Hebron and Jerusalem in the Old Testament. It's not. The Jews won that fight because that's what God wanted. And those peoples are gone. They're lost to history. These are not their descendants. So you need to understand that first and foremost, because if you don't, you're going to think there's a moral equivalency here, or some form of it, to claim on the land. All right? Also, Muhammad never visited the Holy Land. Never visited it. Never physically went there. And he claimed that he was brought there by Allah in a dream. And that really is the entirety of the claim on the Holy Land that that Islam says it has. So the founder of Islam never once set a pinky toe on the ground in the Holy Land, number one. And then number two, the peoples there that call themselves Palestinians are not descendants of the original inhabitants of the land. They're not indigenous to that land. They're not. They have no claim on it at all. None. We can argue, if you want, how much of a claim this iteration of Israel has on that land, and then how much that claim should be allowed to be expanded given the cost-benefit analysis of bloodshed and war and tension. And those are fair arguments to have, okay? But what cannot be argued is that there is any Palestinian claim on the land. There is none, actually, zero. They don't have any historical claim. Throughout history, when the Jews have been judged by God for disobedience, exiled by God for disobedience, dispersed or diasporaed by God for disobedience, other peoples have gone into the land to then settle it for themselves, because it's a very prime choice of real estate. And many times those peoples were of Arab origin. Now, the term Palestinian goes back centuries before the time of Christ, but it is often before a certain era, has often been attributed to Syrians, people associated with the nation of Syria in ancient times. You'll find references in antiquity going back to like the 4th century BC of people referred to as Palestinians, but they're Syrians. Israel, or as it was known in Roman times at the time of Christ, Judea. The first time Judea is referred to as Palestine is by the Emperor Hadrian in the early 2nd century. And the Emperor Hadrian made it one of his singular goals to eradicate the Jewish people from the earth. He went in to finish the temple, as it was known, was taken down in 70 AD in response to the Jewish revolt, so that all that remained was the wall. None of the original temple of the second temple built by Zerubbabel, etc., that was all gone. One wall from the superstructure that Herod the Great expanded when he was renovating the temple in order to try to curry favor with the Jews who hated him because he was worthy of being despised. That is the last structure remaining. You know it today as the Wailing Wall. That's all that's left. And this was in response to a massive Jewish revolt around 66 to 70 that lasted for about 3 to 4 years, 66 to 70 AD. Hadrian made it his mission. He went back in the early 2nd century, and around 110 AD, essentially just vanquished what was left of Judaism in the land, and then renamed it afterwards Palestine. And it was meant to be a smear that they had been displaced, removed, dispersed, diaspora. And so over the course of the next millennia and a half or so, between that moment and 1948, numerous peoples move in and out of the land, many of them Arab and Bedouin in nature. The people that today call themselves Palestinians are people from nations like Jordan, who either left there to move into that land, fled their previous Arab nation, or for a lot of former Jordanians, were kicked out because they didn't want to keep having to deal with this rabble and their terrorist inclinations in their own country. So it's kind of a goulash of identities. They are only really united by one singular thing. And it's a fundamental creed of Islam, that the Jews hijacked the word of Allah, falsely claimed that the promise and the covenant went through Abraham's Semite son, Isaac, rather than through his Arab Egyptian son, Ishmael. And that is the foundational basis of Islamic hatred for Judaism. That essentially Judaism hijacked their birthright. They kind of take the Jacob and Esau story and then run it in reverse, where Esau is a victim and the good guy and needs a historical reckoning to that end. So this is why also mass coexistence has not been possible. The so-called two-state solution would not work. We did a proto version of this around 2006 or so, I think it was, maybe it was 2007 or 8. A limited amount of self-autonomy and agency was given to the quote-unquote Palestinian people in Gaza specifically. How did they respond? They had elections and everything else. They had some form of self-determination. Whom did they vote into power, guys, when they were granted that autonomy? Who did they put in there? Hamas. And Hamas is a term that shows up a couple times in the Old Testament, by the way, in the Bible, and it refers to a specific form of debauched violence, like just depraved levels of violence.
It was a really slim margin, though, that they were elected.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was like the Council of Nicaea. It was basically 300 to nothing. Yeah, it was like 90 some odd %. Yeah. Dan Brown kind of slim margin. Yeah, where it wasn't that slim. We're just gonna lie. Yeah, that kind of slim. So if the president, you need to know this because you need to know why this has been so hard to navigate. And I think it'll help you to make sense of what the president is proposing. If he truly wants to turn it into the MAGA Strip, because for every Dubai or United Arab Emirates and Jordan in the Muslim world, there's a 10 to 1 people and leaders who want no coexistence with the Jewish nation whatsoever. So if indeed Trump wanted to go through with creating a U.S. Dubai zone between Israel and her Arab neighbors, that's going to require some level of mass displacement of the current population there. Because there's just there's too many radicals there that would never tolerate that level of coexistence, and they'll try to turn that thing into Beirut 83 every day, all day, and twice on Sunday. So if it's the other thing, where Trump is essentially saying to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and a few others, come get your boy, okay, take out your own trash, otherwise you're going to make us do it, okay, then this is going to require people of cultural kinship to say, hey, we're not going to tolerate this internally anymore. The problem with that, for every Ataturk, there have been dozens of unsuccessful attempts at tempering and moderating, some of us might say, reforming Islam. So this, again, is an inherent challenge. Not undoable. The president had some success where this was concerned before. But this is the inherent challenge. I'll stop now. Those are the worldviews at stake I think you need to know. You can analyze those worldviews and how they apply to this situation as you see fit. What do you guys think?
Well, I think Greenland, think Panama Canal, think tariffs, both back then and how they unsettled China, and now how they brought Mexico and Canada quickly to heel. It's just a total Bill Murray moment, Groundhog Day. I'm not playing by your rules anymore. It's resetting the board. And people recognizing that it's serious. That's what all of this is. I'd have legitimate concerns if this was in isolation and this wasn't one thing of countless things that Trump has sped forward on and said we're serious this time. But I think this is he literally is playing the closest thing to four-dimensional chess we've ever seen by just taking away everybody's sense of safety and security in terms of the same lame rules applying to reality.
Friendly reminder, if you live and die by every syllable that comes out of the mouth of Donald Trump, or anyone, if you live by every syllable that came out of my mouth, you're not going to make it in this era. So just laying down that marker here, give it 48 hours. Something that I say about this iteration of Donald Trump, take away the peace deals he made in his last administration. Given the first 2.5 to 3 weeks of his administration, I trust whatever he's doing here. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because I think over the past 2 weeks, he deserves it.
All right. Your turn. When we come back, time for some buy, sell, or hold. And then it'll be Daniel Horowitz's turn as well in hour 2 next. And we're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erz and Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Do that by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. We're trying to start all over there after all the censorship that we suffered basically destroyed our old YouTube channel. So at Deace Show on YouTube. And then if you love the podcast, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review. Thank you if you have. Also, you can hit subscribe, or if you tune in via iTunes like me, because you got an iPhone, hit follow. That makes sure that every time we do a new episode, it's there in your feed every single time. So thank you for that as well. Thanks to our friends over at Jace Medical. I could come up with another pitch for Jace Medical, except let me just reset what I said last hour. A United States senator said yesterday, unironically, and with no self-awareness at all, that she was concerned that if the government did not provide unlimited coercive protection for vaccine manufacturers or pharmaceutical companies, they could be repeatedly sued successfully. That in the obesity rate is essentially the American healthcare system in some. So as much as you can take control of your own situation, and there are limits, we can't operate on ourselves, right? Usually can't prescribe meds for ourselves, so there are limits, but as much as you can take advantage of it, our friends at Jace Medical provide you just that opportunity. With the Jace case, it's a personalized emergency kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections before they're the next to be called horse paste and unsafe like ivermectin, which, by the way, you can add if you want to customize your Jace case. You can expand it too. And you can add things like the Nobel Prize winning ivermectin, practical things like EpiPens, which I never thought I was going to have to need an EpiPen as a guy allergic to bee stings in studio. But then I came to work here. All right. So you can get all of that and more with our friends at Jace Medical. And if you use the code DACE10 at checkout, you'll get a discount on your order. That's promo code DACE10, promo code DACE10 at checkout when you go to jace.com, JASE for jace.com, promo code DACE10 at jace.com. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, the prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, returns. But until then, it is now time for you and what you think and what you want us to think about with Buy, Sell, or Hold. No topic is off limits. You submitted them to Aaron. He has determined which ones we will consider. We'll get through as many of these as we can, and what remains we will deal with in the overtime today at blazetv.com/Deace. Todd, you and I are going to decide based on Aaron's prompting whether we're going to buy that, we're going to sell that. Maybe if everyone's lucky, even offer an explanation as to why. All right. If you use your hold, all right, then you have betrayed the dude code, not to mention your own conscience and your gender, and you have completely and totally punked out. And therefore, a humiliation ritual is in store for you. And you know what? This week, it's a mystery. It's a little bit unlike Pinhead and Hellraiser. I've just got a box. And then you kind of just, choose which end of it to open, and some terror will come out. Some terror will come forth. All right. But here's what you need to know. All potential terrors involve Lindsey Graham fetishes, okay?
I was going to say, so far it sounded better than Lindsey Graham, but okay.
Yes. Just a different kind of Pinhead. Indeed. All right, let's go.
All right, quickly before we get to listener submissions, Glitch McConnell has fallen 2 more times at the Capitol this morning as we speak. If he were to retire, buy, sell, or hold, the average Democrat in Kentucky that would be appointed to fill his seat, and I'm not saying an average Democrat would be appointed, but the average Kentucky Democrat would be an upgrade over Mitch McConnell, buy, sell, or hold.
I'll buy, but that's not who would be appointed.
That's what I was just saying.
I know. Yeah, I know. And you're making that distinction. I think it's important. This would just be the ultimate glitch thing. I mean, this would just be the ultimate thing. Stay too damn long to try to nuke your own base as much as you possibly can. And then, when we're still a year and a half away from an election where we can replace you, just completely implode and glitch out totally. When we need you to occupy the seat now for the 50% F grade of agreement with you we have, because that would be 100% more agreement than we'd get from whoever Andy Bashir, the governor there, would appoint, right? This would be the ultimate glitch thing, all right? Hang on, so I can knife my base as often as I possibly can in power.
And then we find out what the term Kentucky Marxist means.
Yes,
and then gets replaced.
But then he can't hold on anymore because Father Time comes for us all, and we have to put up for the next 2 years with whatever Andy Bashir conjures up in there to just continue being knifed, albeit from the left, from a Kentucky U.S. Senate seat. That would be the most glitch thing ever. In fact, now that I think about it, that's the only way this can end. It has to end this way. It has to.
Did he really fall again?
Yes.
He really did.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's in the news. I was just retweeting it. I saw it. I tweeted out, hey, the glitches will continue until morale improves. Indeed.
And also a likely play, just based on reading the tea leaves. I have family in Kentucky. Bashir is pretty well liked.
Yeah, we just talked about this. Morning Consult had a poll that had him with a 60-30 approval rating. Morning Consult is terrible, but even if they're off by a half, that's still an incredible approval rating.
I wouldn't even be surprised if Bashir appoints himself.
Could see that. Yeah, could see that. That'd be their best chance to hold on to that seat.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Again, I shouldn't even have spoken this in the ether. I'm sorry. My bad. But if you stop and think about Cocaine Mitch's career arc, this is the only way it could end. to the last.
It's all
like Khan Noonien Singh. All right, his eyeballs falling out. All right, half his head's blown off. He can't leave the captain's chair of the Reliant. Okay, from hell's heart, I stabbeth thee. Okay, that's the only way this could end. It's for just one last plunger through the rectum from Glitch is the only way this could end. Has to end that way. Bastard.
You know what's hilarious? Is that every time Mitch McConnell falls, people share...
That's like a Peter Cetera song. Every time Mitch McConnell falls.
That sentence is hilarious in and of itself. But every time he falls, people share this video of him falling up a stage. That video is from 2014.
Yeah.
He's been doing this for over a decade.
Well, Ukraine is the most important issue we have in the world today.
Biden, Pelosi with a walker, Glitch, like it's so obviously Gollum-esque in the ring. It's just disgusting what's happened to Congress.
Let's get to submissions. Deace and memes for Pumpkin Spiced Queen says, once Bill Cassidy votes for RFK, Bobby should ignore the concessions he made. And if Cassidy complains, go full Bane. Do you feel in charge, Senator?
100%.
So apparently Cassidy asked for some concessions regarding vaccines.
Yeah. And most of them, I read through them. Most of them are frankly meaningless.
Yes.
Maybe the most meaningful one is the CDC webpage. Okay, then you can just put up on every other webpage whatever you want. But at that point, 100%. And you know, I'm starting to. We discussed this and considered it about a week ago. I think it's entirely possible that Trump just made a conscious decision just to lie about the abortion issue the entire time. Because how he governed on the issue as president the first time, how he's governed on as president so far on the issue the second time, does not match the squishy rhetoric we saw all of the in-between time. Fair?
Yeah.
I think it's entirely possible that in Trump world, just, tell these sons of bitches and liars, and bastards, whatever the hell you want. Whatever, because it's what's more expensive? Okay? Not pretending to give in to their demands and then having to primary them, or give in to their demands, get what you want out of them, and then just do whatever the hell you want. Especially if you're 78 years old and you're only serving one term.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? What's the more expedient play, right? Sure, just tell Bill Cassidy whatever the hell he wants, get his vote, and you and I both know, Bobby, what you're going to be doing when you get in there, okay? So you'll answer to me, and if there's something I don't like you're doing, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Other than that, do what you like, as the great prophets De La Soul once sang. Do what you like, yes.
Next up, we go to Coach OKRA, who says if Kansas City wins this Sunday, Mahomes will move up to second best quarterback of all time behind Brady, or at least on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks.
I'm going to sell, because how is he not already on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks? I don't know how he wouldn't be there already.
Oh, I think there's just there should be a general, we'll get there when we get there kind of thing. But I don't disagree. I mean,
he's the first quarterback ever to start 6 consecutive conference championship games. This would, if you win, it'd be your 4th Super Bowl overall, right? Aaron?
No, it'd be the
with
5th.
Him?
4th with him, yes.
4th with him, I mean. Yeah. So that would put him in the Bradshaw.
Yes.
And
did Elway win 4?
No, he won 2.
He won 2, okay.
Yeah, he went to 4.
Yeah, he went to 4, that's what I was thinking.
Or went to 5, actually. He lost the first 3 and then won the other 2. He lost to the Redskins, he lost to the 49ers and the Giants. And then he beat the Falcons and the Packers, or the Packers and the Falcons. So he would be, is Bradshaw the only guy to win 4? I mean, Montana won 3. The 4th one that the 49ers won in that era was won by...
4, didn't he?
Did he win 4?
Yeah.
16, 19. Oh, yeah, and they went back-to-back in 88, 89. Okay,
yeah.
So that puts him in the 4 club with Montana and Bradshaw. They're the only... And Brady. They're the only 3 in that club, right? Mm-hmm. He is on pace to reset everything in the record book he wants that Manning and Brady have, depending on how long he wants to play, okay? I mean, I don't know how he's not in that Mount Rushmore already.
Yeah, Bradshaw and Montana both had 4 wins.
Yeah. And Brady has 5, right? Didn't Brady go 5 and 3?
No, he went 7.
He won 7. How does the Michigan fan not remember that Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls? So,
I mean, it's...
I think I'm going to sell. Mahomes is already on a Mount Rushmore. The question is which face.
I don't think you can be wrong about this answer. I think you're right. He already... arguably already on the list, but if you're just talking about this, there's so many great quarterbacks in history. And the simple fact of the matter is Patrick Mahomes, he might not even be halfway done with his career right now. I mean, how old is he, Aaron?
He's 29, I think.
Yeah.
He could still, I mean, he might not be halfway done, which means it could be
with
insane
his mobility,
and rewriting everything.
With his mobility, the amount of shots he has not taken, like you saw with Peyton Manning, a very stationary quarterback, he lasted, but when it went, right? Okay, fast. With Mahomes, he's 29, but the amount of mobility he has demonstrated, we're not talking about a guy that's taken a lot of shots back there, okay? So 29 is more like maybe 26 or 25 for him, right? Yeah. By the way, quick correction. I'm now being told from John Kemper, that one of our listeners, that the Kentucky legislature changed the replacement process 2 years ago with supermajorities in both houses of the legislature. They submit 3 names to the governor, and the governor must pick one of them.
Interesting. Okay.
So in that case, Mitch, keep falling. Okay, we're done here.
Right. I think the more interesting question is less about Patrick Mahomes than about the Chiefs, particularly. I mean, you can already have the debate now, but certainly if you win, are they the greatest franchise? Is this the greatest franchise run in history before it's even over? Because it's incredible.
It's up for debate.
Right now,
sure.
it's at least third behind Noel and Bradshaw and Belichick and Brady. If we're talking Andy Reid and Mahomes, it's at least third,
and that's a high bar.
And it might even be second, but it's no lower than third.
Right.
Okay. So what's the distance? It's way easier to make the argument they're second, I think, than first, because the bar with Belichick and Brady is just so unprecedented. But okay.
But if they win,
because that would be the thing, they would have done the thing that the Patriots never did, and no one's ever done. And your Packers with Bart Starr and Vince Lombardi didn't do. No one's ever done. The Steelers didn't. The Steelers won 4 in the 70s, but they went back to back twice. Okay, so no one has ever done a three-peat ever in the Super Bowl era. No one's ever done it. So
I also think the Patriots, when you look at it more closely, I mean, I'm not trying to dumb it down. I've always respected what they did there, but there's both. The comeback against the Falcons and then the last play victory over Seattle, they are this close to being 5-4 instead of 7-2.
Oh, they've had, is it 17 consecutive one-score wins, Aaron?
Something like that. It's something ungodly.
That's crazy. No, there's been nothing like that in NFL history. 17 consecutive one-score wins, I think, is what I saw when you count the playoffs. Yeah.
All right, moving on.
I've been informed that the last submission's last name is supposed to be said okra, like the vegetable. I'm not sure why it's all capitalized. That's why I said it was like an
acronym.
An acronym.
Our bad.
So.
Duly noted.
Sorry. Below Elbow Guy says J.D. Vance is, in the long run, going to be to conservatism what Henry Wallace was to FDR's New Deal progressivism, a doctor of the faith, if you will. Did y'all get in when I was out last week into the Ordo Amoris thing?
Yeah, you got to tell you, I have to tell you, I'd never heard that theological term ever. So I got a nice theological lesson finding out about this last week. But actually, as it was explained last week, this pattern repeats itself throughout the scriptures. For example, look at the Great Commission, okay? First, you start locally, all right? First to Jerusalem, then to the rest of your countrymen, Judea, then to your geographical neighbor, Samaria. And then, so this idea of that the hierarchy of what it means to love starts from the kingdom of God from the inside out, it plays out repeatedly. But I mean, there's numerous references to this in the New Testament. Never give up doing good, especially to those in the church, over and over again.
To me, it almost seems to rise to the level of general revelation. No one would fault another person for leaving their inheritance to their children.
Correct.
As opposed to children of people 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 miles away.
In fact, the rich guy who doesn't leave an inheritance to his kids and leaves it to some foundation or his side piece.
Yeah, there's a rock star who said he was going to do that in the last couple of years. I can't remember his name.
Throughout history, that person's been looked at as a douchebag and a terrible dad, right? So yes, I think this absolutely crosses into general revelation, common or natural law. Yeah.
So on the submission here, J.D. Vance will be to FDR's New Deal what Henry Wallace was. J.D. Vance is going to be a doctor of the faith to conservatism. similar to Henry Wallace. Buy, sell, or hold.
I will sell because I think he's going to be president of the university, most likely.
Todd?
I think I'm selling just because it's too much to put on him or any one person. And also, we're just 2 weeks into this.
I think it's entirely
good.
possible
That's a good
in
answer there,
a
the last part.
15-second clip and a follow-up post on X that J.D. Vance expressed and propagated a biblical worldview into a greater degree that Mike Pence ever did in his 4 years.
Oh, it's not even close. It's not even close.
I think put it that way.
Yeah. Let me give you a good analogy for what people hope Vance is. And it'll be a sports analogy. I think the best analogy is that J.D. Vance is Frank Leahy to who did Pat O'Brien play, the great Notre Dame coach?
If you're going to use your sports analogy,
I forgot the name. Play that clip of Elizabeth Warren again so I can recharge my batteries, for goodness sakes. Okay, Newt Rockne, thank you. I think a better analogy is that Trump is Newt Rockne and J.D. Vance is Frank Leahy. I think that's ultimately what you're hoping for. And Frank Leahy technically had a better win percentage and more success than Newt Rockne. Just didn't have the personality.
All right, this next one might be my favorite buy, sell, or hold submission of all time.
Wow.
This is from Jason. This is a meme. If the person who named walkie-talkies named everything, stamps would be licky sticky, defibrillators would be hardy starty, bumblebees would be fuzzy buzzy, pregnancy tests would be maybe baby, bra would be breasty nesty, fork would be stabby grabby, socks would be feety heaty, hippo would be floaty bloaty, and nightmare would be screamy dreamy. Buy, sell, or hold.
That is subtle,
I like that.
That is subtle brilliance. If you came up with that on your own, I'm simultaneously in awe and afraid.
I'm a little depressed, quite frankly.
I think that's brilliant. I'm going to absolutely buy.
I'm selling.
That's brilliant on multiple levels. Yeah.
Aaron Reale says, until or unless the income tax can actually be done away with, Trump should just executive order that the IRS not collect income taxes nor punish people who don't pay it. Why not?
Oh,
why not?
Now that's
Aaron Reale, you're on a list now.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's going to get adjudicated right away because it'll be argued that Trump is violating his oath of office by not faithfully executing the laws of the United States because these are tax laws. Okay. So, but I do think he could decriminalize. He could order the lack of enforcement of, people being audited. He could definitely stand down on enforcement for sure. But saying flat out we're not going to uphold the law is, I mean, I think it's a high enough moral standard that to do that. But understand what the consequences of going that far will be. Okay, his entire presidency would essentially be stalled fighting that out. Maybe it's worth it. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that would be the stakes of what would happen.
Yeah, I like where you're at, but I'm still going to sell.
Daniel Zitrick says the It's Always Demons crowd and the It's Always Aliens crowd is really the same group of people.
I'll sell.
There's overlap, but I'll sell.
Yeah, there's overlap, but they're not the same group of people because the reason people are saying it's always demons is a totally different reason that people are saying it's always aliens. And their motivations aren't even the same. The It's Always Demons crowd believe that they're exposing deception. The It's Always Aliens crowd believe that they are receiving and finding and seeking deliverance. Okay? So, other than that, though, they're totally the same.
Next, we go to Trevor. Why bats? They scare me. Going by that, if Steve becomes a superhero, he would be either Waspman or Mouseman. For obvious reasons, we will exclude Mama Daceman and Mrs. Daceman. Todd would be its sidekick, Catholic man who uses anger and shame against his foes.
I do that now.
Yes. Aaron would be Alfred, making sure everything works behind the scenes. He can be anyone. I'd recommend the Sean, was it Pertwee version of Alfred? I've never heard of that.
Neither have I. I love Wasp Man, or just the Wasp. I love that.
That's already taken.
It is. But I like that. I do. But I love the entire setup. Todd, just his superpower shaming people.
We got a submission coming up of Todd's preferred Super Bowl spread. You won't want to miss that.
Oh, my.
That'll probably be in the overtime. We'll see. Tiny Johnny says leftists and rhinos have to attack Trump now because the short-term discomfort won't last forever and will result in long-term benefits for America. They can't have that because they live on producing short-term comfort that produces no long-term benefits, which lets them run on the same problems over and over again.
I think there's a lot to this.
They're screwed either way as long
whether
as
or not
Trump
they know
continues
it.
to be successful. They're just, right now, they're just shattered losers, and they're utterly irrelevant the more Trump is successful. I mean, they have no good options.
Yeah.
They have to. They have got to count on their opponent dropping the ball, screwing
introduced
up.
articles of impeachment this morning. Somebody did.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
A tradition. Essentially, every president for the rest of our lives, without revival, is getting articles of impeachment.
Okay.
You're in a civil war. So I don't really care, Margaret.
Timothy Stevens says the lies behind abortion, trans mutilation, and COVID crimes have seduced a lot of everyday people into committing barbaric atrocities, often against their own children. But even in the face of undeniable evidence, many people will never abandon the lies, because accepting the truth about these issues would mean having to accept horrifying truths about themselves.
And I think it's one of the reasons why there was never a critical mass drumbeat for justice to what was done to us, because so many people, so much of America is culpable in this. We either let them do this to us or we enforce this on one another. No one walks. We can't say, hey, it was only rich white people in the South that owned slaves, so yes, let's have a reckoning, right? We can't say, well, I was never really a member of the Nazi Party. My kid never joined the SS, and so by all means, let's make sure #never again is a thing, okay? I mean, every single household in America, just about, and certainly every single family, if you count extended family members, were an enforcement mechanism of this. No one walks out of this thinking, boy, batted 1,000 on that. And so you prefer in that case just to say, let's just forget the whole thing. All right. I mean, some stuff went wrong. Mistakes were made, kind of lost our minds. Let's say what happens in COVID stays in COVID, and let's just, forget that ever happened, and we're good. Good. Move on. I think that's why.
There's a Scottish sociologist who went viral in a clip around this time last year who hypothesized, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, and it goes into that submission, that it is far, by orders of magnitude, far more likely that the children who are trans, I'm doing all this with air quotes, with the consent of their parents, it is by orders of magnitude far more likely that they will walk away from the lies of transgenderism than their parents ever will, even in the face of their own children, saying that this was all a lie and a crock because of what he was just talking about.
Yep.
They will never be able to face the reality, the horrifying reality of themselves.
Basically, what you're saying is only Nixon could go to China.
Yeah.
Okay. That it was gonna require a former Democrat who could say, I didn't leave the Democratic Party, they left me, to, be the most right-wing, champion of the culture war in his era. That it took Bill Clinton, I feel your pain, to sign into law, hey, you basically go to prison if you can't get off welfare in 2 years, and 3 strikes and you're out. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's going to take a former Democrat like Donald Trump to say, well, we're getting rid of the trans crap. We're not doing that. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. Okay. Bobby Kennedy could get nowhere with the supposed Workers' Party of trial lawyers and going after vaccine manufacturers. So it'll be the Republican Party that'll help him do it instead, right? I mean, this is not an uncommon dynamic. You see this in the faith. Okay. You think of some of the people from Augustine of antiquity to Josh McDowell of modernity. Some of the greatest apologists in the history of the faith were people that were so far away from it and had no interest in it, and in fact wanted to disprove it. So this level of contrarianism is required, I think, given the sinful state of humanity. That's why it's so uncommon, or so not uncommon, when it comes to who are actually purveyors of righteousness and what their backgrounds are. Yeah.
It's funny. My wife this morning was telling me that she was reading something on social media. Hannah Arendt and the banality of evil was brought up, and I said we were talking about that, which refers exactly what this is about. But I couldn't remember something, Steve, and you triggered. I had to ask you anyway, so my wife will just hear on air. I said it reminded me of this movie you told us about recently. I haven't seen. I can't remember if it was a documentary or an actual movie, but where the Nazis were just casually talking about...
Zone of Interest.
Was that...
is what it's called. It's an actual film, and it's incredible.
Yeah, that's what... Okay, Zone of Interest. We'll remember that, because it's all basically about that, how banal it all was. They were just basically balancing a spreadsheet, basically.
Yeah, the kids are arguing over the swing set in the yard while the shreds from the mills where they're just burning Jews alive across the fence are just coming down like rain in the afternoon. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, 90-second super rapid fire. Congrats says the tariff war will cause an increase in consumer goods prices, which will trigger Trump to suspend income tax collection while energy is becoming increasingly affordable, which will send the U.S. into a boom era.
I don't think I think he'll do something to offset it, but I don't think it'll be that. Also, I'll sell.
I'll buy. It might happen.
Mini Bomber says the reason Pelagius faded quietly into obscurity is because the church took him out back and iced him.
They went Operation Neo. And then I pulled out Pelagius's beard and I said, Lord, remember me for what I did for you. I want to believe this is true, so I'll buy.
Yeah, I'll buy. I mean, they did a lot more.
That's a church I want to belong to.
They did a lot more than this church does.
JJ Barron 44 says, on Aaron's current trajectory of turning up the heat on his montages, Steve will start to pre-screen them just so he isn't flustered starting the show. Is this true? Am I turning up the heat on the montages?
I don't sense that at all.
No, I don't sense it
I just think it's been a consistent strain of excellence, but that's not my style anyway.
Steve would never screen it.
Yeah.
No.
I love it though when I.
If I thought I had to do that, I wouldn't. If I thought I had to do that, I wouldn't give someone else the power to speak first into my show. If I thought I had to.
There have been only a very few occasions where I could tell that I'm making you uncomfortable. Your face gets very red. It's very fun. Very fun to watch. Ari Den Beston says, ultimately, Christianity is the only solution to peace in the Middle East. In the world as a whole, coexistence will never work and is merely a mirage.
Correct. There's only one worldview that sufficiently answers why the world is the way it is, why we are the way we are, and what can be done about it.
Just don't sit there and gloat, because that's also true for America, and we're not doing so great on that front.
Amen to that.
Yeah. John Paul Jamarlillo says, Trump moving fast on executive orders is the best cover for Republicans in the legislative branch to do the things we like without much backlash, and they're squandering the opportunity. I hadn't even thought about this, but it's true. I'm a buy on it.
I'm a buy on the first part. I think it's too early to say. We don't know when we get into like Phil Kerpen was saying yesterday, we don't know how he'll be able to leverage them like he couldn't before. I want to see that first. But the first part of that, I will buy. The second half, I think, is to be determined.
I'll buy, which is why I said it back in 2016. Go. Lots of things at once.
All right, when we come back, we'll have Daniel Horowitz all at once next. So listen, disruption, which we're all applauding right now, has trade-offs, right? Not like everybody's going to roll over for us as we've seen Canada and Mexico do in the last week, okay? There's a moment where some people who want to geopolitically compete with us are going to say, I'm your Huckleberry, I'll call that bluff, and we'll disrupt a few things on our own end. And that disruption can lead to some unsteadiness when it comes to your assets. And that's why, again, we want to remind you about our friends over at BIRCH Gold and ask you, what are you doing right now to protect your family's future? And gold is a safe haven in hard economic times. BIRCH Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. They'll help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket either. So protect your future today. Text Steve to 989-898. Text Steve to 989-898. Get your free info kit on gold and a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era, with a forward from Don Jr. himself. No obligation here, only information. Text Steve to 989-898. Text Steve to 989-898 for your free info kit on gold and a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era. Time for the prophet of woe and lamentation. Our friend and colleague, Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing all right. What's with the woe and lamentation? I mean, you talk about gold. Gold's going to 3,000.
That's very true.
Very bullish on that.
All right. There you go. We found something else Daniel's optimistic about. All right. Let's start with something I saw you post on X a few days ago. And as soon as I saw it, I went to you and I said, hey, we got to make sure we talk about this on the show, right? Because there has been a lot of rightful consternation about voter fraud on the right. Although I have to say now, this is a true Joseph, what you meant for evil, God used for good. whatever version of Trump you and I may agree or disagree we are getting right now, you and I think would both agree this is way better than had he won a second term in 2020. Way better than that.
Yeah.
So in some respects, maybe we all needed to get ripped off and go through a little bit more pain, and him in particular, in order to get and have the kinds of conversations we are benefiting and permitted to have at the moment. And even our complaints, I think, are largely the right kinds of complaints. You'd rather be having the kinds of complaints we have right now than the kinds of complaints we had before. And so in light of that, though, you were highlighting that the worst form of voter fraud of them all is still rampant and largely unconfronted. Give us the details on that.
Sure. Everyone's talking about a mandate, how there is a broad mandate to get rid of illegal immigration, get rid of inflation, get rid of the DEI insanity. So if you believe there's that degree of mandate at the 50-yard line of American politics, the nation as a whole, Washington, well, you can imagine Florida, Texas, South Carolina, Montana, these places where, Trump won almost every area. Man, I mean, you just have a free runway, right? And what you can do with this mandate, unlike Trump in Congress, where, a lot of it you're going to be subject to pendulum swings. Democrats are going to come back and commensurate with how bold we are, they're going to be even bolder and, erase it with interest. This stuff you could do permanently. And I'm just watching 30,000-foot view of these legislative sessions. And I'm just going to tell you, there is no inspiration from the election. They have not changed one iota in terms of their focus, their modus operandi. It's just harder to defeat them because they're more subversive. When I talk about voter fraud, see, if you have a bunch of Democrats that take over Texas and Florida and do what the Republican leaders are now doing in the chambers, they'd be thrown out in a minute. These guys, it's hard. They put on the MAGA hat. They say Trump, a noun, a verb, and a name drop of Trump. I'll say, Steve, we're voting on the toughest immigration bill. We're following the Trump agenda. And, there's people that are blocking that agenda. In South Carolina, we had a bunch of guys that they put this rules package designed to block amendments, right? Because everything they do is a false dichotomy. So they don't want an amendment vote to vet out that particular point. They want to be able to say, well, this is going after DEI. This is going after illegal immigration, and really it subverts it. But if you vote against it, it's like you're voting against, the Trump agenda. So they had this rules package with some arcane rules in it. And they put out memos in Freedom Caucus districts saying, if these guys are opposing the Trump agenda, like what the hell does Trump have to do with a rules package and a chamber? So this is what we're getting now. We're getting Republicans that are capable of doing something that only they could do. Democrats in red states are kind of like a defensive lineman with their hands cut off. They can't do anything. Only Republicans could march the ball in their end zone for them. Mm-hmm. They cannot do that. Mm-hmm. They are incapable of doing all this stuff. The voters made it very clear they don't want them ever anywhere in power in those states. And yet what Republicans are artfully doing is right now subverting the mandate. This is where a controlled opposition is so critical. It's this portion that we're at right now, when you have the ability to solve an issue completely, and they come right in to make sure that it's not there, and they use conservative arguments and Trump and name dropping to do so. So I'm just going to tell you, Steve, that we're looking at a lot of executive actions, a lot of good things, a lot of out of the box thinking that I think is good. The Republican Party as a whole has not changed at all. That's what I'm here to tell you.
100% agree. Where I am torn is what is the solution for this? Because we are expending an insane amount of political capital at the federal end right now. Okay. On multiple fronts. And And the good news of doing a multi-amphibious political assault against your enemies, rather than just a topic or issue a week du jour in your first 100 days like presidents traditionally do, right? Okay. The good news of just going June 6th every single day and hitting them from so many fronts is that yes, you have completely bewildered them. We've now got, they are left to defending awkwardly cans of Corona beer and Elizabeth Warren saying, well, what happens if the vaccine manufacturers keep getting successfully sued? So now she has to defend the corporations, okay? So, but the trade-off to that is we are expending an immense amount of energy on our end, right? Like Dwight didn't say on June 7th, 1944, all right, now we're going to do this all over again in North Africa, okay? I mean, this is a major operation. And so how much would you advise Trump to expend political capital to get down to this level of granular level with everything he's got to focus on in D.C.? How much is, for us as an industry / movement, should we be diverting away from some of the fights that we are having? I mean, I don't know the answer to these questions. What are but I do know that, time and energy are, limited resources. There's only 24 hours in a day and we're human beings. So what are your thoughts?
No, for sure. And that's where we're at now. I mean, everything's in play, like all three branches everywhere. These are very excellent questions. Excellent questions. I would say, as far as Trump, let's just take Trump. So there's state and then there's Congress. Obviously, his focus needs to be more on Congress, but it does need to be on Congress. Let's start with Congress. He's going to need to take the bold, out-of-the-box vision embodied in a lot of his executive orders and directives. He's going to have to connect it to Congress. This is something that was a flaw in the first term. So let me give you a real example. What could be one of the most transformational things we could get is what he seems to be very serious about to this day, abolishing the Department of Education. It's a great example. And we could also throw in abolishing USAID there as well. USAID, which he's already embarking on. This stuff needs to be put in budget reconciliation. Mm-hmm. It needs to be put in there because it'll be more permanent. Also needs to be put in there because a lot of this stuff the courts are going to screw with, and we're already seeing that. They're going to say you don't have the authority to just shut down an agency or completely consolidate it. Congressional Research Service just put out a paper asserting that, at least in their view. So you're going to need that. So Republicans are grasping for straws on how do we find savings because they don't want to cut any spending. Well, didn't Trump just say he wants to get rid of that Department of Education? I mean, right there, put that in there. Why is that not in there? So those are the dots. That's something he cannot avoid. Mm-hmm. He's got to engage Congress and make clear his expectations. That's a no-brainer. As far as the states, so all I ask is Hippocratic oath, do no harm. I don't think we need him to weigh in heavily any place. But what we
just don't offer an incumbent protection racket is what you're going to say, right?
Exactly. Because then we're done. Mm-hmm. Then we're done. I mean, so to your point, you don't have to expend time. Just the opposite. If you're putting out slates of candidates and doing kind of what he did last cycle, well, that's expending time on it. Because I'm just going to tell you, it's not a coincidence that the two suicide bombers in the Florida legislature are the ones that slobber over him the most. Now, I think it's mainly a one-sided relationship, but they get his endorsement. That's why they're that bold. You take that protection racket away, we're going to do a lot better. So that's him. And then to answer your question on the industry, I mean, I think...
In other words, just to reset, you're like, hey, spend all your political capital on what's happening at the federal level.
Yes.
We can handle our own business down here on a statewide or local level. Just that's what you're essentially saying, right?
And they're saying it because their one solution to everything is Trump. Mm-hmm. Everything is Trump. That's the only thing they can say. They can't debate an issue. So they just wrap themselves in his agenda. And I think this is where, people like Charlie Kirk that, say that they support our agenda and our way of thinking. And, they're all these people are upset about the rhinos and everything. Well, just know they're using your name. So you need to make sure you call in those airstrikes that Trump's name is not used in vain for vanity, which is what they're doing now. So, I mean, that is number one. As far as, the industry, I mean, look, this is always going to be something I have to prioritize every day. Like, there's so many things I can't get to. But
we don't have USAID writing us $50 million checks like they did, like Politico did, for example. We don't have that. We have to monetize our audience. So on some level, we have to be receptive to what they want to read and will react to. We have to. We're not getting NGO grants like Politico and their side does. We're not.
Exactly. But let me give you some examples. So, obviously we are going to have to, we do have to expend capital on primaries. There's no question about that. You can't change the party if you don't change the party. I mean, I don't understand why that's so hard for people to understand. But as far as issues, so you'll have some like property tax issues that are big in some states. All right. So, people deal with it locally. But when you deal with a lot of the strategy nationally is the states. And I want to use immigration. Immigration, there's two elements to it. There's maximizing the efficiency of the mandate to get out as many illegals as we can now. And then there's also maximizing the mandate while people are pissed off to build in a time of plenty for a time of famine. Okay, for when Democrats come in, and they will come in, and they will invade it even more, to have a standing deterrent that in the red states, they don't come. They just don't come. And DeSantis wrote a model for that. There's a lot of good guys in all these states that are writing bills, and they're being gutted because Republicans don't want to get rid of illegals. They want to get rid of the ones in jails, and watch for that. That is going to be a dividing point. They don't want to get rid of them. And this speaks to the mandates. To bring it back to just the broad vision, we can have a scenario where they get in and bring in 10 million, and next time will be 20 million. And we get in and we'll just get out the criminal aliens. In a vacuum, that's great progress. But over the course of 10, 20 years, that's how we continue to lose. We can't afford to just be, at least Biden didn't win, or, Harris didn't win. That's great. But we got to maximize it. So I would say on the core civilization issues, when you have problems with Florida's speaker, South Carolina's speaker, Texas's speaker, that's where we can have our most impact, because they are Republican states, and we can't ignore this, because otherwise, just remember, Trump's time is ticking. He's not going to be around forever. And you're not going to have that celebrity status. So what does the Republican Party look like without that?
Yeah, and you're getting a preview of this in Florida. Basically, what's happening in Florida is a few years ahead of where we are nationally, essentially. All right, great stuff as always, Daniel. Thank you, brother.
See you next week.
You bet. Todd and Aaron, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, Trump's clock is ticking, but the status quo is too, which is, I mean, just now, breaking while you were talking, Steve, Pam Bondi just sat down. Attorney General just froze all federal funding for sanctuary cities. See that? Having to deal with Congress and the states, ultimately, yes. But again, we are 2.5 weeks into this thing. The way they have to be dealt with, the clock is ticking on the states and Congress too, in terms of what the reality of the playing field and the rules of the game are going to be. And if RFK Jr., he's not sat down yet. There's all kinds of things that we can do to change the reality of the negotiating table. Trump intends to doing that. So we have a long way to go on the wait and see.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't have said this in the first Trump administration necessarily, but this is what we're seeing from the Trump administration. There's a meme that's going around, and I love it. You can just do things. You can, if you have power, you can just do things. The Republican Party takes yes for an answer and then goes and it takes it as a signal to do the worst to its base. When it is finally given yes for an answer at a national level, that's when they seemingly have the most permission, they think, to do whatever they want to the people who are most likely to vote for them no matter what. That's the lesson of the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
What should be happening right now is they should be taking every jot and tittle cue from the way that the Trump administration is going about their business and laying waste at their own levels to the left. Are they doing that? No, I think I just saw a tweet the other day. Maybe it's not. The State of the State address in South Carolina, the governor's asking for like $500 billion in spending or something like that. I'll double check on that. But it was some ungodly figure of money. Like, what are we doing here? Texas, Florida, what's going on in Florida right now? We cannot emphasize this enough. And I don't care if I sound like a broken record. I don't really care. If you do, Steve, this is the Republican Party.
Yes.
And it cannot wait to lie back down in its own vomit and feces. That's what you're seeing right now.
We're getting them to do things, or let's be more specific. Trump is getting them to do things they do not want to do, just as DeSantis got Florida Republicans to do things for years that they did not want to do. But there comes a point there that eventually your worldview finds you out. You can't rise above your own worldview. People will not, for an indeterminate amount of time, do the right thing if they don't believe in it. They won't. They won't. Now, in a fallen world, and you learn this, sometimes it's just called parenting. Other times it's called owning a business. But you learn, present company excluded, but you learn that you have to figure out how to get people in the short term to do things they don't want to do because you're the one in charge and you think that they're right? But you do that to also buy yourself some time to demonstrate and prove that these are the right things to do so that they will then buy in and want to do them themselves. But for a long period of time, you cannot get human nature to do that which is right for the wrong reasons. That's not a long-term strategy. But right now, it's the one we're forced into. Romans 8:28.